Y- Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it. When does your book come out?
November 7th.
Ah, not long.
Yeah, not long at all. Well,
2
hello,
weeks.
everyone. We're live with the amazing, and I love this because there's not a lot of people I feel like that I'm like, wow, this person is amazing. And I like loved co-presenting, like, or presenting like side by side with this person. But Dan is really one of my favorite people. And one of the things that I admire about you and your work so much is how you can really balance sort of like what we can do now, but also really thinking about what's coming 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even if not everyone can handle it.
Yeah, it's yeah, I love working with you as well. I think we were in were we in Michigan when we
Who's in
worked
Michigan?
together? Yeah, yeah, it was brilliant. It was great to see you in person as well. So yeah, yeah, I guess that's what I'm a real big believer in the fact that education needs kind of a two-pronged approach to innovation, and that is how can we be helped right now in our current circumstances, but also how can we look towards the horizon and look to change things up. And I think good leadership in education is about holding both of those in harmony. I think traditionally in education we've only held really one of those sides of the coin, and that is kind of innovation that helps us do what we're already doing maybe a bit better. And to be fair, I think we've done pretty good at it. But I think the realities that we're now in, especially with kind of going into this era of advanced AI and other, not just AI but other technological innovations, I think we're going to have to we're being forced into a corner where we're going to have to rethink what we do, and I think that's quite exciting.
It is, unless you're somebody who is not feeling super prepared, which is what this the webinar series is designed to help you do. So let's do some introductions. First of all, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We are hosting this webinar series as part of a launch to the upcoming book that's coming out, Designing Schools, on November 7th. And really, the book is all about design thinking and how to use it as a method and a mindset to be able to see things that traditionally we've seen as either not possible or things that we just think there was absolutely no solution to, or there's no way to change something, and begin to kind of have a bit of a framework for how to take some of those steps in moving forward in that kind of direction. And this webinar, like when you're doing something like that, or even if you're thinking about change, I feel like so often we go to work or we go to like our curriculum or we go to those spaces. Really, this webinar series is about you. And it's about if you were to take everything else off and you were to just think about yourself, your own career, your own life, and what that means in a world with AI, what might that look like for you? So if you did pre-order the book, you are enrolled into our mini course and you have the resources. So you know, last week we chatted with Carl. This week we're here with Dan. Last week we talked about, okay, what are my skills and how could I even monetize from something without leaving the classroom? That's such a big thing for people. I think once people as adults start to see other possibilities that are out there for themselves, you begin to realize what's really possible for kids as well. And you kind of just feel some of that enthusiasm and motivation. So I'm joined here by Sophie. Sophie, introduce yourself. And then Dan, we'll get into our first question with you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. My name is Sophie Theodoro, or you might know me as Teach to AI from socials. I'm an AI and education content creator, former teacher, and now consultant with Designing Schools as the Director of Teacher Learning and Innovation. I'm very passionate about human skills in an AI world and leveraging those and teaching our students to be lifelong learners. So I'm super excited to be here.
Amazing. So Dan, I feel like I met you, or yeah, I think I first met you after your book came out. So I'd love for you to kind of just like walk us through a little bit of your background and really talk about how you made this transition from being in the classroom and to really being such an international creator with a huge impact on so many people at such a critical time.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Sophie, I just noticed your handle at Teach2AI, and
Yeah.
I reckon I think you're on Instagram, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just started an Instagram account
I
just a few
noticed
weeks ago,
that. So
and
yeah.
my publisher, which is Teacher Goals as well, like encouraged me to do it, and I was like, I really don't want to do it because I just never used it. I don't understand it. So I really pushed myself, and Sophie's the only one who likes my post. So now I know who you are. That's great. Thanks for liking my post.
Perfect. That's so funny. Yeah, keep them coming. I love seeing them. I love them. I love your little margarita tour and whatever. It's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I suppose I've always been the type of person who's had kind of a side project. I've never been satisfied with like my day job, and it's just because I don't know if it's my personality. I don't know if it's I don't know what it is really. But whatever I've done, I've always kind of liked to do things that are a bit more creative on the side, and that when I started to teach, that very much quickly became about ed tech. I remember when I was training to be a teacher, I remember having a session in one of the training sessions where one of my colleagues was talking about cloud technology, and I just suddenly thought, my goodness, why aren't we using this? This is like the early days of kind of Google Classroom, maybe even just before Google Classroom, and I thought, maybe why isn't it's just a no-brainer. So I introduced it to my department, where my school department where I was working, and then we kind of the three of us decided to start using it and got excited about it. But very quickly, and I think this happens with a lot of people who get involved with educational technology, we very quickly realized that a lot of educational technology is not necessarily about educational technology. It's about actually how can we utilize technology to change education. And so I very quickly went down the rabbit hole of what could the future of education be like? How could we improve education? And so kind of what was born was very simply a podcast with myself, my colleague Ben, and we decided we called it Edufuturists. And it was a podcast that, well, I was with it for about 5 years. It's still running, but I've stepped aside from it now. Stepped aside about 2 years ago, and so that was my project. And we turned it into a small business. We did training for Google, for other companies. We did various different things, and so I had to learn, as you do in a very small startup. I had to learn every skill. So as well as my normal day-to-day teaching job, I was also teaching myself graphic design. I was teaching myself business, finance. I was teaching myself copywriting. I was teaching myself social media skills, and working away at that for a few years. And and then I suppose in my day job, I was starting to look at artificial intelligence a lot. And this was kind of pre-ChatGPT, and I was looking at it. How could early language models start to help within the educational setting where I was working? And then ChatGPT came out, and I kind of just pivoted very, very slightly into applying all of those skills that I'd built into this area. And because it was an area that was in demand and needed a lot of education around it, especially in those kind of, I say early days, we're talking 2 years ago. It feels like a long time ago though. That things those skills were maximized really and were reaching their potential very, very quickly. So I was able to start a business. I was able to start helping teachers start solving problems, I guess, which is kind of the core of entrepreneurship and the core of any business that wants to survive, and I guess the core of design thinking as well. What problems are we solving? And then kind of, so it was very organic in that sense. It started from the problem of this technology exists, what do we do about it in education? And then kind of I was able to, because I had practice and experience, to quickly build a business around it and turn it into a viable option, where I left my day job, and then kind of the side project became my full-time gig.
Okay, I love that. And there was so much to unpack there, but I want to highlight one really important thing for people, because this is really the core of this webinar series and like why we're so excited to have you here. And that is that by doing these side projects and by doing these things that fuel you, right? Like it's even like that genius hour concept in schools, right? Like, so like it's the same whether you're an adult, a child, like we all benefit from this. But I love, love, love how you had that list of all the skills it is you learned. Because I think being able to just have a little bit of confidence in those areas allows you, to your point, like you said, when you see this opportunity, you see something that you could do, you're able to then make the transition. And I think there's a lot of people that feel like the transition is made like overnight. So one thing I want to get from you is like, what timeline are we talking here? Like, what year did you start the podcast?
I think it was maybe 2017.
Okay. So I think that's just so
Yeah.
important for people because like 2017 was like what? Like my math is awful, but a long time ago. And things don't just happen sort of overnight, but when you start to dabble in different areas or even just lean into what those side projects could be for you, you have no idea where sort of that might take you. So, 7 years. Thanks, Praveen. The math is better than mine.
It's because COVID was in there. Like I don't know about you, but anything pre-COVID, I'm like, when was that?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
that feels like another life. It's interesting what you were saying there before you move on to the next question. I think I remember when I was on a leadership team in a high school, probably around that same time, around maybe 2018, 19. And I remember the school I had joined because I'd moved home, and so I just kind of got a job at the first school that would have me really. And I then got onto the leadership team, and the school was in trouble, and another principal from another school came in to try and kind of consult and save the school. And I remember she met with all of the leadership team, and it was my turn to go in and meet her. And the first thing she said to me, and she was a great woman called Christine, and the first thing she said to me was, "Watch your out." Like, what do you know what I mean by that? So
Yeah.
sometimes my thick northern British accent gets in the way, but she said, "Yeah, watch your out," and I was thinking, my goodness, I don't want to tell her that I got an out or even thinking about an out, because surely she wants my dedication to be at the school. And she very quickly, I think she probably picked up on this is what I was thinking, and very quickly she said, any leader worth their salt has an out. And she said she says you need to. It's realistic. She's like, you can't. You need to be thinking about your next steps all of the time. And her whole point was, I think, just like what you were saying, Saba, that be working on other things, be working on building skills, be working on different projects, not so that you can take the out, but that you've always got the option to have the out as well, because then you're in control. You're not just waiting for redundancy. You're not just waiting to retire. You're not just waiting and placing yourself solely in the hands of your line manager. You are taking the initiative in your own life, and then when you want to make a step, you want to move out. You've built the foundations to be able to do that.
I love that so much because, I feel like this is the one thing we don't talk about a lot with like the changes in AI. Like, I feel like we're very much about like features, tools, capabilities, but really that mindset that you just shared is something that, like, I mean, I don't know, like you're really lucky to have a leader like that. But I always share how, like, whether I was at Apple or whether I was at anywhere else, at some point that really became friction for a lot of places because they don't know how to honor that and they don't know how to like understand that you could be multiple people, not multiple people in the sense of like different people, but like multiple passions or multiple interests that ultimately, like I always used to say that like those interests actually allowed me to do what it is that you ultimately brought me on for. And I think that, it was even a tricky thing with the webinar series because, like the book Designing Schools is obviously all about like, how do we make education better? How do we make teaching the best job ever? And so I always say like this webinar series isn't to say like everybody leave the teaching profession, but it's to say like reignite those parts of yourself that, to your point, are your out, because I think it also gives you agency. Now you're not compromising and forced to do something. It's a choice when you want to stay somewhere because you have other choices. And I feel like, Sophie, like you're a really good example of that as well. Like I feel like both of you, and we're going to dive a lot more into Sophie's story in our third webinar. But I don't know if you want to kind of just like share a little bit on that point, because I think it's such an important one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like this is all resonating so much with me. I'm like, it's like it, and people think an out as a negative thing, and it's not. And again, like Dan, like you had an incredible leader there. But yeah, a lot of people ask me because I was just teaching up until the end of June, and they said, how did this happen? Like, and now I'm doing consulting and whatever. They expected that it happened overnight, but it definitely did not. I was teaching full time and then working on my content creation at night, 4 or 5 hours. I was working 14-hour days. So and that's like, I only did it for a year. So I didn't have a lot of time to establish that. And I also worked part-time for a startup again, which accelerates your skills like beyond. Like if you're someone who can take initiative and learn quickly, that's the best place for you to start. But yeah, so it took a lot of work. It took a lot of dedication and continuing to go on, even if I'm not seeing the results right away. But yeah, it definitely takes a while. You don't need to rush it, but I think as long as you stay committed and true to yourself and focus on your skills, what you love, like providing value, it will work out for you. And yeah, so I found that really interesting. Dan, you're from England or Scotland?
I am from England. Yeah, I'm not too far from Scotland. I'm like 50 miles from the border.
Okay, my family's in Scotland. I was wondering.
But I think what you're saying there as well, that actually, if you're getting energy from it, then it almost doesn't matter if it doesn't become a business in itself, or like, I mean, amazing if it does, and that's what you want. But I remember when we used to do the podcast, every Thursday night we'd do the podcast, and I remember some nights like getting home from a busy day at school and just thinking, oh my goodness, I really don't want to go do the podcast. Like I just haven't got the energy. But every single time, without any exception, straight after the podcast, I'd be re-energized, and because it's what I love to do, and I love to learn from different people, like guests that we had on. So it's the thing itself which is the value. It's not necessarily where it could lead. If it does lead to something where you get to start your own business and you get to do it full time, then that's amazing as well. But it's also not the be all and end all, because even though I turned that side project into my main thing, I still have to do a lot of things within my day to day that don't give me energy, that drain energy. So it's kind of like a continual balance. Yeah.
And I love that. Yeah, like same thing. Like, oh, I'm dreading this or whatever, and then after, it's just like I could run 2 miles. I'm so pumped. Like that was so much fun. I'm so energized, and yeah, it's just fulfilling on an individual level as well.
And I think that fulfillment piece is the really important one. And so if you did pre-order the book and you are in the mini course, you will know that one of the exercises that was in there was the spark type, which literally, to Dan's point, talks about like what energizes you and what drains you. But once, the first half of these webinar series, I forgot to say this in the beginning, but the first half of these webinar series are interviews with people. And the second half, we get into content and how to actually work on these ideas. So today we'll be working on how to take your idea and actually turn it into an actual product. But like we said, without leaving the classroom, just so you can kind of take that first step. So you started telling us a little bit about how you stepped into this AI space and whatnot. But I remember you were one of the first Twitter accounts that I thought was really interesting when this was happening. And so I feel like right now there are so many challenges around us. Like every single thing is up for redesign, pretty much. Like in your personal life, professional life, like any space that you want to look at, everything is up for redesign. I'm really curious, what was that journey like for you as you were like watching what was happening? You saw this challenge that you knew was coming, and you've had so much experience before as well. But how did you sort of take those steps in the beginning? Like, especially around that, I would say like November to February timeframe, and turn it into this opportunity where you were going to help and make an impact on so many.
Yeah, it's I guess it probably goes back a couple of years before that. I did an online postgraduate diploma in innovation and design thinking. It was through, I think it was through MIT, Columbia, and it was like a joint qualification. And one of the lecturers on there was an Indian professor called Vijay Govindarajan, and he kind of presented this this strategic approach that he uses with businesses called the 3-box solution to innovation. And I just kind of fell in love with it, mainly because it's really simple. And I love things that are really simple, mainly because I can understand it, but also that it's easy to communicate as well. So in it kind of he goes through the like box one being right. What are you currently doing? What's your current aims? What's your current success criteria? He calls it the performance engine. What are you getting out of bed every morning for? What have you got to keep going? And then he talks about innovation within box one, and he calls it linear innovation, about how we'll actually. And I suppose the most cliched example of this is kind of the factory line, going from raw materials to product. And actually, if anyone's looking for a new job, I remember looking at conveyor belt or factory engineering. So somebody who goes into like a factory and consults, so they might be there for a month or so, and then they look for different parts along the process where they can save like a second here, a second there, and they get paid a lot of money, like literally $250,000 for per job. Because if you think about it, just if increasing the efficiency of that line could save a company millions of dollars. And I think, and that's the epitome, I think, of box one. It's how do we go from where we are to where we need to be, but maybe more efficiently, maybe more creatively, whatever it may be. And I think that type of gradual improvement, and it is a type of innovation, is one thing. But then he also talks about, well, what if something disrupts your box one? What if something comes along external and could potentially make that box one irrelevant? And then so he talks about box three. Now I'll come back to box two in a second, but he introduces box three as non-linear innovation of creating the future. So how do we change what we were doing? And I suppose prime example of this, I guess, is blockbusters and Netflix. Again, another cliched example, but blockbusters were quintessentially box one, couldn't see out of box one. Netflix comes along and threatens to disrupt what they're doing, but they don't really see that. They don't move to box three, and they become irrelevant. They don't exist anymore. Box two is what do you let go of to get to box three. And so kind of I took this on board as not just a strategic approach for my work, but also kind of for my life as well. And it kind of really links with that, what's your route? Because it's kind of like, well, box one is what you do, and box three is what's your out? What are you working on? What are you balancing in the meantime as an option to maybe transition to? And I was thinking that for a long time. A lot of friends around me were starting their own businesses, were leaving their jobs, becoming freelance, and I really felt it was the next step for me, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what. I was, like I say, I was building these skills, but just didn't know where to apply them to get to really maximize them. And then, yeah, it kind of happened. I suppose there's different elements here, isn't there? There's luck, there's being in the right place at the right time. Luck plays a big part in it. We can be skilled as much as we want, but luck still has a part to play. And then also the skills to apply to that luck in order to get the most out of it. So,
and I want to pause you there because I think I think that does you a disservice in some ways, but I think it's such an important thing to highlight that when you invest in these, and I feel like this is the hard part about manifestation, it's like you can't believe it until you experience it, but until you don't experience it, you don't believe it. And I feel like being invested so genuinely and authentically the way you talked about with your podcast in those side projects honestly sets you up even subconsciously to the skills that you might not even recognize you have. Subconsciously, you are now set up to where luck meets opportunity. You're ready for that thing. So I didn't want to interrupt, but had to
yeah. And I guess up to that point as well, like the two of the guys who I did the podcast with, we'd founded this organization. And I suppose up until that point, every kind of innovative idea I had, I would bring back to the group. And because of just the nature that we were three guys who all had our own jobs, and we all did this. Not I wasn't the only one who had ideas. We would bring ideas to the group, but it never felt like we did much with them because we'd have to find a time to meet. We'd have to it was just, there was a lot of other pressures. We'd have to agree. We were all very strong-minded, and so things would just kind of fizzle out very quickly. And then when ChatGPT came out, I remember looking online and not many people were talking about it. and kind of nobody from an education point of view. This was kind of very, very early December of 2022. And I think I might have come across something that was quite negative from an educational point of view. It was the first thing I ever come across on Twitter. And I suddenly thought, actually, I don't see it like that. So what I did was I quickly just pressed on my cell phone the record screen button, and I went to the ChatGPT website and then did something which just sounds so basic now, but back then I'd nobody had ever, or I'd never seen anyone do before, where it was just like, create a rubric or mark this piece of work, whatever it was, posted it online, and then did that a few more times over December. I had my Christmas break, came back home, and then the end of December, I did just that, and then it kind of took off and went viral. So this was like the kind of the 1st of January. Actually, I've missed a bit out. So the day before that, it was New Year's Eve, and at the time we had 2 very, very young children. I think we had like a 1 and a 2-year-old. They're 5 and 4 now. Maybe we had a 2 and a 3-year-old. But Julia was. We were on vacation at a nice it's a little coastal village called Berwick upon Tweed, which is kind of on the Scottish border. And Julia was putting the kids to bed. I went out and got some food for us. And as I was coming back, it's like an old, I think it's like an Elizabethan walled town. So the town's got like walls around it to like protect it from Scottish invasion. So I came and I walked around the walls and I looked out at the North Sea, and it was pitch black. And I remember saying to myself, this is the year I start my own business. This has to be the year. And I remember like almost making that promise to myself. Anyway, the next day, so this tweet goes viral, and then everything kind of just went from there, really. So I was getting requests to do webinars. I was doing webinars. They were selling out very quickly. I got a book. So Teacher Goals approached me and offered me a book around that time. And then I remember, so that was kind of the 1st of January. Remember the 31st of January. So the same month, last day of the month, I was appearing on, there's a British television show called Good Morning Britain, which is like the main kind of breakfast television show in the UK. And I was appearing on there with like the phrase AI expert under my, like, as a title. So literally from the 1st of January to the end of January, it all happened really, really fast. And then I was at the crux point of how do I kind of make that transition out of work? But I think you've just got to put things out there. I really do. I've since learned some amazing techniques. There's a guy called Daniel Priestley who's a great business person in the UK, and he's a big advocate of wait lists. He's like, right, you got an idea, create a wait list for it. Don't like, let's say you've got an idea for a course or you've got an idea for a book. Like, literally don't do any work on it. You've got an idea. Make a landing page. So it could be like a Google site, very quickly, or you can do it on Canva now really easily. Create like a one-page landing page. Attach a Google form to it and just say, the new book or new course coming soon, this is what it'll include. Join the wait list and start promoting it. And in that form, ask people, what do you want? What are your desires for this book? What are your desires for this course? What if you were to buy this course and it doesn't satisfy you? Why might it not satisfy you? Why might it satisfy you? And he says, right, just put that out, and then not only are you going to test the idea, but also the answers that you're going to get are actually going to help you to create that course or create that book, because now you're going to know what people want from it and what people don't want from it. And I think it's just a really beautiful way of just testing an idea. And he's like, you know what? He's like, a lot of people won't do that, because if it bombs, if they get like one response and no responses, they will feel like an embarrassment. They'll feel like they've put themselves out there and they've embarrassed themselves, when actually in reality nobody will notice. Nobody will even people will see the wait list, they'll not complete it, but they don't know that nobody else hasn't completed it. And within a week, they'll forget the wait list even existed. And then a couple of weeks later, make a wait list for your new idea. And maybe one idea out of 10 across those few months actually starts getting traction. And then you're testing it. You're testing. I mean, it's testing the market, isn't it? That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think social media as well, like we were saying before, I think putting things out on social media. I don't know about YouTube, but I do a lot of this with my writing, especially when I'm writing books. If I come up with like a core of an idea, I'll turn it into a tweet or just a small little paragraph for LinkedIn, put it out there. And if it gets like one like, I'll be like, maybe that idea doesn't have any life in it. Maybe it's just not. So I'll park it to the side. I might come back to it later on. But if it suddenly gets like 80, 100, 150 likes within a couple of hours, I'm like, shit, there's something here. Something's resonating. So then what I'll do is I'll take the core of that idea and it might become a chapter in the next book. It might become a section of the next book. So I think it is just we're gifted like no other generation ever before to be able to test ideas out on the world and keep testing ideas out. Like nobody has ever really had that gift before the internet and before social media. So yeah, I think I did that almost by accident. But now that I've gone back and learned about business more, I can see that it's a really good technique, and there's so much information out there. Like I learned a lot of this through people sharing amazing information and insights on social media as well. So yeah.
Now that's such a beautiful example of like design thinking, like the testing. And that's one of the things we say is like design thinking is like very inherent to just who we are. I know we're coming up close on time, and it's interesting you mentioned because we're going to be talking about him. No, we're good. We're good. We're going to be talking about him and getting into some of those exact strategies that you just shared. So thank you for setting the stage for that. But your next test and upcoming kind of idea that you're putting out into the world is a new book, which interestingly, when I think about your box 1, 2, 3, it's almost like these books are sort of aligned with your boxes. Tell us a little bit about this next project, the book that you have coming up, and just things that people can look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Infinite Education, the 4-step strategic approach to change. And the whole idea is that it kind of goes back to the fact that although I get booked a lot to speak in schools or work with schools on artificial intelligence is it's the outer layer of this thing. Actually, when you start peeling off the layers, artificial intelligence is just a way to realize that we need change in our education system, and not just the linear type of change, the non-linear type of change. And essentially, you keep peeling back the layers, and you get back to kind of like traditional change management. You get back to, well, how do we do it? Methods like design thinking. And so I wanted to write this book about, well, how could we differently approach education? And I remember reading a few years ago James Carse's book. He's an American academic about infinite and finite games. And it's a business book, but he talks about how some people play games or start a business or whatever they do in a finite way. So it's a way to meet an end, and that's their whole focus, and they don't go beyond that. And he kind of advocates for infinite games, about actually continuing the play, whatever we're doing. And it just resonated with me that actually our education systems, and this is very broad strokes, are the epitome of a finite game. It's like literally that last day they're with us, those students, when they've gone into that final exam hall and finished that final exam, and we say goodbye to them. It's kind of like that. We're doing it for that moment. And I've worked in high schools, and I critique from a place of love, because I love being a teacher, and I'm a big supporter of teachers. It's why I kind of pushed AI as well for helping teachers with workload. But I think we've got ourselves trapped in a situation where we're focused on a finite game. And actually, I think what our students need and what the world needs is education to be infinitely focused in terms of actually not to give a damn about that exam hall, like, because that's not the be all and end all. In fact, it means very little, and that's becoming more and more apparent in our world, that the grade you were given on a particular day, in a particular circumstance, in a particular situation, when you were a teenager, does not dictate even what happens to you a year later, never mind 10, 20, 30 years later. So it's how do we start to refocus our outlook on actually preparing our students for the rest of their lives, for the infinite game, for continuing to learn, for continuing to, and I kind of argue that this is the type of outlook we're going to need in a world of ubiquitous artificial intelligence. So it's called Infinite Education, and I go through the first half of the book is all about kind of setting the stage of talking about what have we got in terms of this technology, where could it be going, what have we got in terms of the education system, why is there friction points there, and then I start to introduce. This is like really clear in my head because I'm editing the first half of the book at the moment. So kind of where are the pain points? What are the problems that we need to solve, I guess. And then the second half of the book is kind of like it's a 4-step strategy. And it's a strategy I used to use when I was, my last job before I started my own business was, I was a digital strategist for a group of colleges. And as a strategic approach I used to take was, I kind of came up with it with I had a mentor, a leadership mentor, and it's a 4-step stage which starts with scope, then shape, then influence, then align. And it's kind of it's a stage process of going, right, how do we scope the problems that we have, look and start to look at solutions? How do we then shape the message that we want to give? It's all about kind of internal change. How do we start to influence? I think a lot of our organizations, or educational organizations, do really well at the scope and shape, and almost we think that's the end. Like, okay, we've looked, we realize we need a policy, or look, we realize we need a new strategy on this. Let's get together and draft it, and then we save it as a PDF and it goes on the website. Like literally that's the end of it. So the next 2 stages are influence. Well, actually, how do we influence the other people in our organization? Nobody really teaches anybody that. So never mind teachers. So how do we start to influence people? And then once we've started to influence them, how do we align them on that shared goal? So it's kind of, the second half is practical tips and strategies and tasks, some of which are design thinking tasks as well, on how to actually do this. It's a bit of a playbook so that the idea is that somebody who's in charge of innovation in a school, let's say, can pick up that second half of the book and just start to put it into action and work through it. So it's kind of I don't know about you, but when I've been working with schools and colleges, universities over the last couple of years, the need is very much shifting to that strategic approach. And and I think there's a big stumbling block when it comes to how do we strategize for a future we don't know. And that seems to be a big block, and a big mental block for a lot of people. It's really easy to strategize for something that you know is going to happen, but how do you strategize for something you don't know is going to happen? And actually, we get to the heart of strategy there, because actually, what people tend to refer to when they talk about strategizing for something they know is going to happen is essentially just a plan.
Yeah.
Actually, real strategy is about planning for the unknown. It is about creating a vision for the unknown. It's about creating the capacity within the organization to deal with the unknown as well. So I try to kind of make that distinction between a plan and a strategy, and say, like, this book is not going to be a step 1, step 2, step 3, do this, and you're sorted for the next 5 years. It's how to craft your own vision, how to craft what you want to do. So yeah, I'm really proud of it, actually, because it's really, the first book was very much like the AI classroom was very much like a comprehensive guide to how to start using artificial intelligence and how to start rethinking the skills that are needed, teachers, leaders, and students. Whereas this kind of builds on that and goes for kind of addresses more where my passion's been for the last so many years into how do we craft the future of education. So I'm really proud of it.
That's amazing. And we're going to link all of the resources that Dan shared with you. And I've seen some of your articles as well that I'll link inside the course too, around the box 1, box 2, box 3, where I've seen you kind of really go into detail. So we'll go ahead and we'll drop those into the course for you. But you have set us up so beautifully for what is about to come next, which you are more than welcome to stay for. But if not, like, we will say bye. We will say thank you for being so generous with your time and sharing so many amazing inspirational ideas that, like I said, are just the perfect segue to where we're about to take things right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to getting the book.
Oh, amazing. Yes, on the way. All right. Bye. Take care.
Bye. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Bye.
All right, everybody. So we are going to go ahead and go into our we're going to go into our sort of like content part of this right now. So give me 1 second. Go ahead and we will open this up. And here we go. All right. So Dan literally and if you're in the course, we'll have a recording in there for you right after this is over. All the exercises and everything are also all in here for you. But basically, he set us up so well to be able to get into our second part of what we're going to be doing. So these are all the slides from part 1 that are linked for you in the course. And today, what we're going to do, so last time, your goal was to really just kind of find and identify your skills. There were a series of exercises that really helped with this process. We heard some really, really, really interesting stories, both from inside education and from outside. And one of my favorites was from Barbara, who was sharing how she is going to be looking at how to integrate AI to streamline humanitarian onboarding processes and just some of the work that humanitarian organizations do, all leveraging AI by building out training programs. So this is just to say that there are so many different areas where you could apply these strategies. But in this particular one, we're going to look at okay, once you have your idea, how do you actually begin to execute on it? And I think a lot of times when we talk about execution, the first thing that comes to people's head is marketing. But you heard from sort of Dan today, just being able to even put out a wait list, and we're going to share some of these strategies in a moment, but even just being able to put your idea out there without having really worried too much about the creation element or the marketing element of it, it really gives you a feel for sometimes what's needed. So we are going to break this down into 2 different parts. Today is really just about really refining that product, making sure you're super clear on what it is you want to create and how you're going to get the data to inform what you want to create. And then our third and last part of this webinar series is what is the tech needed to launch, to market, to sell, and all of that. So we kind of just divide this up into 2 pieces. Okay, so last time there were 2 big questions that we wanted you to answer. And remember, you have this course, there's no expiration on it, you have it forever. So there's no rush. If you didn't get to do this last week, don't panic or anything. It's there for you inside the course. But last time we asked, what do people ask you for help with? And what do people rely on you for? And what I want to do today is kind of give you a couple of examples for where you might be able to first apply some of those ideas that we looked at. And the way we sort of look at the scale is we look at it using an income and effort matrix. So, bottom left-hand side is obviously something that's low effort, but also probably a little bit lower maybe on the income side. Although sometimes it's hard to say because sometimes honestly, even the low income, low effort area can honestly, depending on just how much of a need there is for your particular item, can actually, kind of be low effort, high income too. So just know that they're not fixed in any different category, with the exception probably of the top right, high effort, high income. These ones over here are definitely bring in a substantial amount of income. However, it definitely sometimes can take longer to create. And not only do they take longer to create, they are also something that you have to sustain as well. Whereas something over here on the bottom left-hand side is something that you can kind of just do once. Maybe you might update it every like couple of months, maybe every year or so, if even that. This is something that you're not going to have to do a lot of upkeep for. Whereas the more you come over to high income, high effort, there's going to be a lot more upkeep over on that side. So I'm going to basically walk you through sort of these different areas and just give you a couple of examples. And then I'm going to have Sophie jump in with like kind of like what she does, just to give you a feel for just kind of where you might be thinking and where you might be leaning. Now, if you have questions or anything, drop them in there. And Sheila, just to answer your question, when you pre-order the book is when you get all of the resources and you'll get enrolled into the course. So we will go ahead and we will get that in there. So I will, then any questions, I'm seeing a couple come in and we'll go ahead and we'll answer those with you as well. All right, so over here on the bottom left-hand side where we have templates and resources, this might be something that you use in your classroom or in your leadership role. It might be an evaluation form. It might be a really cool project that you do where you have like all of the handouts and all of sort of the deliverables or the different slides or the different aspects of the experience packaged together so that if tomorrow somebody wanted to implement that same experience, they would be able to do so. So for example, if I had say like an introduction to design thinking, like here's a 60 to 90 minute design thinking experience, I'm going to package it up for you. Here are the directions. Here are like any handouts. Here's how to facilitate it. And here's all the different pieces. And I might sell that for like $7 to $10, right? If even that, I could go lower if I wanted to. I could even go higher if I wanted to. But in this one, the low effort, low income, the goal really is to keep your item anywhere between, I would say like $5 to $10, because it's something that like can be, you don't want to put so many things all into one, because if you're putting a ton of things all in one, you probably are coming now a little bit more onto the sort of like, more effort, more income, where maybe you're putting together an ebook on how to introduce design thinking into your elementary school classroom. Okay. And now my price point is going to get a little bit higher. So on this one, let's say I was taking that design thinking experience, whereas the template might be something very simple that you could just like pick up, purchase and implement right away just by printing out or just by, putting the slides up for and facilitating the experience. The ebook, a short course, or a pre-made set of lessons might be something a little bit more overarching. So this isn't just how to do this one 90-minute design thinking lesson. This is how to introduce design thinking into your elementary school classroom, how to use design thinking as a leadership team, how to use design thinking for, how to reimagine writing in the age of AI. Like there's so many different areas I can go in here, but in these particular areas, the ebook, the short course, or the pre-made lessons, I'm going into the why. I'm also going into the how and like what are all those pieces you're going to need to be successful. So you can kind of think of this mini series that we're doing for you right now as sort of like something that would fall into this area of high effort. Obviously, we're doing it complimentary, it's free, so like there's no income here. But tomorrow, right, if we did want to package this and say sell this experience, we absolutely could, because the webinars are done, like the recordings are there, these lessons are here. If you come into the course, and for those of you one-on-one to make sure you all have it, but you can see over here when you're inside the course, this over here is our very first series of lessons. So you come over here and you're going to be able to get access to the webinar that we did last time. There's all these different exercises in here. In module 2, which is going to go live right after this, the webinar will be in here. And then we have a series of different prompts for you as well.
We can see the slide. We can't see the screen you're on. Are you on the course?
Okay, yes, I am. Okay, thank you. Hold on one second. Let me go ahead and make sure it's sharing the whole thing. Sorry about that. Okay, let's do it this way. Okay, is this there?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Amazing. Okay, so this is the course. And so, if you were in there last time, and like I said, for anybody who didn't get in, we'll make sure you do. You can come in here, the videos, you just come and play them. There's different exercises in here, really broken down. please use your one-to-one. I think many of you did, but know that you can schedule a one-on-one with me to be able to go over your idea or just go over any elements that maybe are like roadblocks for you. But then over here for part 2, which is today's, the webinar will be in here as soon as this is done. And then we also have a series of prompts for you in here that kind of go into how do you create an easy template, how do you create an ebook, or how do you create a mini course. So we took kind of like the most popular ones from here and went in there and designed a prompt for you that you would be able to do. All right, so up at the top right over here, like I said, this one is definitely a lot more work. This is, I would say, comes much later in the journey because there is also a lot of tech sometimes that needs to be set up for these. And so I always like to think of it like Dan said, like test something early on just to get your feet wet, just to get comfortable with the whole like cycle of what it means to create and put something out passively and kind of move your way sort of like almost like, counterclockwise, if you will. I think too many people think this at the top, the top left is the number one route they should go. I want to do consulting. I want to do speaking. I want to do this. I want to do that, which is great, but also has an income cap. And the reason it has an income cap, and we put this over here on the low income, the only way this becomes super, super, super high income is when you become a really, really, really exclusive, sought out individual who can charge like a lot of money for just one engagement. Meaning like you're charging $100,000 for a keynote or something like that is when we would probably consider moving this obviously over to this side, which kind of falls into our high ticket consulting area right over here. But for the most part, that's not how most people start off. In fact, these sometimes are often very low paid as well with different organizations and things like that. And so while front facing might look like the most appealing or the number one way in which make the transition, it actually is, there's a cap on your time. There's just like the beauty about the templates, the online courses, the ebooks, pre-made anything is there's no cap on time. These things can be selling while you're sleeping. This requires you 100% front facing, right? Unless we're like going with like AI avatars or something, this literally requires you to be 100% front facing. Sophie, I'd love for you to comment a little bit on like where you feel like content creation or being a creator would kind of fall into this matrix.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So I think, oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. So I think before you even create a template or a resource or an ebook, how are people going to know you have that, right? Like unless you just sell it via your own email list or personal connections, you need to start being a creator and getting yourself out there. Because if I have a template that I'm selling for $8.99, but how are people going to find that? I need to present myself. I need to be out there front facing. And the best way to do that is through content creation. So whatever you know about, just start sharing it with everyone. And you might think, oh, I should be gatekeeping this, or I shouldn't be giving away this knowledge for free. I'm a big fan of Alex Ramosi. He's a great content creator and businessman. He said, give everything away for free. People will not your resources, but in your content, give so much value then that people want to buy from you, right? Like they want to see you as a thought leader. They want to see you as someone that they can connect with. Authenticity is huge. So by creating content and putting yourself out there, that's how people are going to connect with you. And then later on, buy your resources. It's not going to happen overnight. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Amazing. Okay, super helpful. Yeah. So and like I said, we're going to get super deep into Sophie's story and everything that she does all in webinar 3 when we're ready for that. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of, a little bit of an overview of what it looks like sort of like at designing schools when we think about, when we think about these different elements. So one of the things, and we could sell this, but we don't. It's free when you sign up for our AI Bootcamp webinar. But this over here, these are 50 easy AI prompts. They span 10 different areas. So there's everything from like, a family game night to, creating an online course to, thinking about your career to just all these other different pieces. There's 5 professional and 5 personal sort of like prompt areas that we kind of walk you through on how to kind of leverage AI tools in 10 different areas. But this is just a very simple PDF with a couple of prompt templates, super low effort, but could be super high income. I mean, we've never really thought about selling this, but we probably could, but we give it away as part of our main area that we focus on, which is the AI Bootcamp. And the AI Bootcamp is our online AI course experience, which is so much more than AI. I always say come for AI, but stay for design thinking. Yes, of course, you learn about AI, you learn all about that, but you learn a lot more about like what Dan was talking about earlier with like, how do you take these problems, turn them into solutions? Obviously, all using the design thinking method. The AI Bootcamp is also, there's no expiration date on it. So once people purchase it once, they get access to all the updates. So if you are part of the online bootcamp, and I know some of you are here, you just received our webinar invite, which is exclusively for members of the bootcamp on all of the updates and just things that have happened in the last month alone. But we update the course regularly. So this for us is our main focus area. And then of course, in-person consulting and speaking services. So this is just a little bit of an overview. And for everybody, this is going to look a little bit different, but this is just one example as to kind of like how we think about it over here. All right, so like I shared with you inside the course, there are a series of prompts for how to create your product. And then next time, we're going to look at how to create your content plan. I have sprinkled in a little bit of the content piece into the course in part 2, just in case you are ready to start thinking about that. But this is basically what you are going to find over here inside of the course. Now, I've also linked for you 4 of my favorite creators who just, I think, have amazing YouTube channels and each kind of specialize in something a little bit different. Daniel, the person that Dan was referring to earlier, is one of the people that we've listed in there. So you'll be able to kind of browse and just like peruse those different people as you go through that. So that's a really great one in there as well. What I love about, and I've in the course and in the slides that you'll get, you'll see the reasons why we've chosen each of these people. Modern Millie, I think, is just really, really good for people who want to start with the low effort, high income strategies. The PDFs, the resources, and all of those are just absolutely amazing. I am a huge fan of Lazy Millionaire. Her name is Amy Tulsford. But what I love about her, and I think even if you're not going to create anything at all, I think she's such a fantastic person to just learn from, to see all of these people are educators. None of them are in K-12 classrooms. Okay. And so I think they're just all really great examples of what the power of education, the power of coaching, the power of teaching, and all of these different elements, but all the different ways in which they do it. So what I love about Lazy Millionaire, she focuses a lot on money mindset and how that can be a blocker for you sometimes when you are going this pathway for all the things that you think you can't do and being able to turn that around. Daniel Priestley, which I need to fix the spelling of, I think is really great for people in a little bit more of a leadership space or who want to become more involved in that leadership space, kind of like what Dan was referring to. And then, of course, our amazing Sophie is just such an example, a fantastic example of just really authentic content creation and how that can open up so many different avenues and opportunities for you to be able to stay ahead of the curve. So all of these people are linked for you inside the course. Now, Dan also shared something else really interesting earlier, and that was around this idea of influence and how nobody teaches you influence. What's actually really interesting is in 2018, I believe it was the first time they did this, but the World Economic Forum, for the very first time in their list of trending skills, identified leadership and social influence. And what I've always found so fascinating about this is that they could have grouped them as 2 separate things, right? Leadership is a trending skill, being on social media and having a brand is a trending skill, but they don't. They link them together. And when I was doing my doctoral program, one of my favorite articles I read was a book by Daniel Knotgrass. And I'll link that for you inside the course as well. But when he talked about influence and designing change, he kind of grouped it in 4 different categories. So this is not the World Economic Forum, but I think these 2 ideas go together because I think when you hear leadership and social influence, it's like, okay, do I have to be like on Instagram all the time or making videos on TikTok and things like that? And what they really come down to is how do you build trust? Okay, kind of like what Sophie was saying earlier, you might have something, you might have an idea, but why should people trust you? Why should they believe you that you are the person who can help them with whatever challenge it is that they have? Being able to encourage creativity, just really motivating people, inspiring people, helping people identify the areas in themselves that they might not see, but to you are really obvious, and helping kind of move them in that direction, recognizing accomplishments and inspiring a shared vision. The reason we like these 4 elements is they can be done online and offline, which I think is like really, really, really important, because if you are a leader, and what Dan was saying earlier about influence, these are the things that are missing. Trust is missing in our organizations. We do not spend enough time encouraging people and recognizing the things that is they're doing. We're sort of always just asking and looking for the next thing. And then, of course, we all have amazing vision statements, but what are we doing every single day to inspire that collective vision so that people feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves? We will get a lot more into marketing in the next webinar that we do. For right now, I really just want you to focus in on, okay, what do I want to create? I have these skills. I have this idea. I see this challenge. Here's what I'm thinking of doing, and really just spend a little bit of time there. But one thing you do want to start having in the back of your head, right? Like just as you think about getting this out there, is what medium are you most comfortable with when it comes to creating? Okay. And I've kind of grouped these a little bit by by genre a little bit, whereas like Instagram, Facebook threads are sort of like a little bit more like of your short form content video. Like if you're somebody who loves video, this might be the number one place for you to be. If you're somebody who loves writing, LinkedIn, Substack, which is just like absolutely one of my new favorites, is probably where you might want to be. I personally, I would say YouTube is definitely the most work, but I feel like it is the highest like ROI on the time that you spend. And just like being able to create really evergreen content, and just, I don't know, I think at the end of the day, just matters on like what medium you're comfortable with. Are you more comfortable with audio? I should have put podcast here. The reason I don't put podcast is it's too much work to market a podcast. It's really easy to create one. Like even with like Google Notebook LM, you're seeing everybody come up with podcasts, but actually marketing and that work it takes behind the scenes is really, really challenging. Whereas I feel like these two, and I would put YouTube in that category too, but I think these two give you the highest opportunity for traction and audience building.
And just to add something to that really quick, I find, so for me, maybe I am a good writer. I don't know. I don't like writing. It drains me, but my spark type is I'm a sage. So I want to teach people things, right? And I've also been a creative performer, like growing up. So for me, it makes sense to do TikToks and Instagram and short form video. I'm on LinkedIn too. I don't love it as much, but so I think looking at your spark type, and then even looking at like your learning style and how you like to learn and teach, that will help you pick which platforms to kind of start on.
I love that. I totally, totally agree. And then over time, you can always expand to different spaces. But like I said, we're going to deep dive with Sophie on that all in our third webinar. All right. So next time, what do you want to do to sort of get ready? Remember, there's a link for to a calendar invite inside the course to do a one-on-one. The next time you really just want to kind of dive into, okay, what do I want my product to be? And where am I thinking of creating things? And then from there, basically, we'll be able to get into sort of how do you create that wait list? How do you start building interest? And all of those different pieces that are there. All right, how do I stop the share on this? Here we go. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so let's get into questions, because I know I saw some coming in. Yeah, absolutely, LinkedIn. So let me sort of just work my way from the bottom to the top. Okay, so does LinkedIn count as a medium? So I wouldn't say that LinkedIn is the medium. One of the things you will see these days that didn't really happen before, it's definitely newer, is you're seeing so many lines being blurred between how to share content on a platform. So whereas before LinkedIn might have been just more text heavy, now we're starting to see they're pushing video. There's newsletters available that you can do. So sometimes it's really easy, like I said, to get super overwhelmed by all the features and all the pieces. So when I say medium, I mean more like, how are you comfortable sharing ideas? Do you like writing more? Do you like creating video more? Do you like audio? If you like audio, we have a workflow for taking audio to text or audio to video, because I think audio alone I think it's challenging to promote something audio alone. I also think ideas even though you're not front facing and on a camera where somebody can see you and hear you and talk to you, because writing is more, there's more of it, or usually it's longer, it builds trust and it builds authority. And I think video does the same, but opposite. Even though sometimes video can be shorter, it can be 30 seconds, it can be a minute or 2 minutes, because somebody can see you, that trust that people build is just much, much, much higher. And I will say, I think in the online space, so I feel like pre-pandemic, being in the online space and kind of selling like courses or downloadable products and things like that wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't as common, but it definitely skyrocketed while everybody was at home during the pandemic, right? Whether you were creating or whether you were purchasing. And not all products are good. In fact, a lot of them sometimes aren't. And so I do think there has been a lot of trust broken on the internet for how people decide to get something. So that building trust with your audience is just really, really, really important. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay. And yeah, absolutely. Like, I think Todd brings up such an important question. I want to create something and share it to solve something, but I'm not necessarily looking to make income. And when we were talking earlier, like, I don't know, like, I did this for, I can't remember how many years Dan did it for. I've done this for like since 2012, which is 12 years. And only last year did I start actually creating things that people could actually buy, when I made the transition to just starting, designing schools. But yeah, Sophie, I don't know you'd say me on that, but
Yeah, no, Todd, I love that. And I think that's where a lot of people can get tripped up. Like, they go straight to, okay, I want to make an income, and that's fine. But if you don't actually have the why behind it and you don't genuinely want to help people, people will see through that. And so if you're interested in creating a product that I can share with others to solve an issue, if you're so focused on that and you love sharing that and whatever, that's amazing. And actually, I personally think that mindset will lead you to more income, because you're more authentic, you're more trustworthy, you're going to be more knowledgeable on the topic, and then opportunities will start coming to you. So I think that is awesome. And I know we are over time, but with me, when I first started creating content, I was very obsessed with the views, the likes, the follower count. And once I stopped worrying about that and I started actually being like, okay, I have 60 seconds to teach someone something and help them. I don't really care how many views it gets. I'm just going to share my knowledge and try to help someone. The views started coming in. The followers started coming in, right? So focus on what you think is important, right? Because if you focus on just the metrics or the money or whatever, it's not going to be sustainable either. So I really love that mindset.
amazing. I think that's so important. Okay, so if you do have to go, just know we are recording this and it will be inside the course, which, let me clarify on what, because I think there's a bit of confusion in the chat. Okay, so the course is housed inside Thinkific, and Janelle, I'm going to message you after to make sure that you have everything. But basically, here's how this is being done. So if you did not pre-order the book, but you're on one of the live streams, you're able to see this because we are live streaming for free. However, to get access to the course and the resources, you'll get that if you pre-order the book, and we can drop a link into the chat for you. And the reason for that is this: like, this is probably the number one topic that we get questions on. Like, how did you do this? How do you start this? How do you create things? How do you do all of that? And it's just not, like, it's not what we do, right? Like, our focus is design thinking. We work with schools and organizations on designing change, on AI integration, and all of these different pieces. This topic, though, is something that we thought we would do for this as honestly a really huge thank you for pre-ordering the book. It really, really, really means a lot. Your support means a lot. And so that's why the one-on-one calls are there. Like, anything you need during this, like, honestly, just as a huge thank you, is available to you inside of the course. And so if you are watching this, but you have not pre-ordered, that's why you might be like, okay, where's this course? What's going on? This and that. So we'll drop the link. If you want to join, you'll get access to all the webinar recordings. So even the ones from last time. And then, like I said, there's no expiration on it, so you'll be able to have it. So hopefully that helps there. Amazing. Okay, let's see. I think that's it. I think we got all the questions.
So Todd just says, what device platforms can I access the mini course? So it would be they would get the link in the email after they pre-ordered the book, correct?
Absolutely. So once you pre-order the book, you'll automatically be enrolled into the online course and get all of the, there's like 3 webinars, like you can sign up for all of them and you can get into there and you'll have access to the course. Yeah, Janelle, I'm going to check for you because I saw your name in there. So like you're in there, it probably just needs the link. But yeah, as soon as you pre-order, you'll automatically be enrolled into the course.
Awesome. And then Barbara said, do you think that knowing how our target audience prefers to learn or which social media they use will be important to know to decide on how to share our material? Yeah,
Yes,
I think
yeah, go
yeah.
for it.
No, yeah, it's all good. Like for sure. Absolutely. And like even if say like you really don't like writing, you really like short form, but you don't think your audience is on short form, do both, because we can show you how to use AI to convert your video or your audio to a post. But yes, the one thing, this is just an aside, the one thing I learned is, you think TikTok, you think it's Gen Z, you think blah, blah, blah. There are so many professionals and highly, highly educated people on TikTok that I've met just through TikTok. And I was like, this is crazy. So you'd be surprised. But yes, I think the answer is yes to that.
I also would just say, like, sometimes it's not about either or. Sometimes there's like a pathway that then tells you how much effort you should put where. So if I was to think about like what we do, I feel like still 90% of everything is word of mouth. But sometimes when somebody recommends you, people want to be like, okay, who is this person? Like this person just talked about them, but I want to kind of see for myself. And so I find that then video really instantly converts somebody, because if they just heard like, oh, this person's a great speaker or this person did a great workshop, and then they go online and they see a video of you presenting or a video of you speaking, it's like instant validation for them that what they heard is actually true, because now they can see it, they can scroll, and they can kind of go through it. So one of the things that tells me is I should really value those in-person experiences and it really spend a lot of time there. And video, I don't have to be spending and creating 10 videos every single day or one video every single day, because even just having a selection of things does that. You might also start to hear things from people. And I think, I find the whole writing and AI thing to just be so unbelievably strange, because till this day, writing is by far one of the most popular mediums across every single age span. I know there's so much out there about like people don't like to read and everybody wants short form and this and that. No, people don't want to read boring nonsense. But if you're creating good, high value content that is sharing strategies, that is answering people's questions, believe me when I tell you, people read. Like till this day, and I only very recently started my Substack, but it's probably one of my best performing content areas from everything. So you sometimes, like, to go back to Sophie's point earlier about likes and follows, the same people who I actually think that like there's a lot more people who silently watch and engage with content. They don't like, they don't follow, they don't do anything. And I can tell you that because honestly, every single time I'm out anywhere, a bunch of people will say things to me and I'm like, I had no idea you were even watching, or I had no idea you were even like seeing any of this. So okay, yeah. So Sheila, the reason it's Kindle only right now is because the paperback is almost ready. So if you do want the paperback version, not the Kindle, where it says order number, just put paperback on our system. We believe you. So like just add paperback into there and just go ahead and hit submit. So that's going to be the piece there. So yeah, like I said, the whole point of that is like, don't lock yourself into any one particular area. Keep things open. The most important thing is to just like try and test. All right, so we went a little over time. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. Sophie, give them some closing inspiration because you're like the ultimate content creator.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. Yeah, at the end of the day, you need to be creating content about stuff you love. And if you don't, and you try to do something that you don't like or you don't feel passionate about, it's going to be really, really hard. And another piece of advice is just put in the reps, just create the content. Something I learned from my good friend who has like 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. Not that that's like saying he's amazing, but he's very good at creating content. He said, every single time I do something, I try to do it in one take. And then I learn from the comments or I watch it back and I said, oh, I could have improved this. So I improve that for the next video. And it just keeps compounding. So don't be afraid to just start. My first videos, I can't even watch. Okay. But they converted well. So don't worry, just start and you will get over the cringe really fast.
Amazing. All right. Well, everyone, we will see you. Webinar 3 is November 6th, I believe it's scheduled. And the reason there's a gap is so that you have some time to apply these ideas, think about these ideas and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, inside the course, there is the one-on-one. Use it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. The prompts are in there. If you need a prompt for, like, say, another thing that we didn't include, just message us and we'll go ahead and give you some advice on how to tweak things up. But yeah, thanks everyone for joining and we'll see you soon.
And